and we will get started with our Fiscal Year 2025 pre-application webinar. I'm Dr. Pamela Maimer. I'm a Senior Program Manager for the Fulbright-Hays program. And with me today is our fantastic Amy Marion. Say hey, Amy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy, and I'm also working on the Fulbright-Hays DDRA program. Welcome.
And we are happy to have you here today. We have a lot of information to cover. Most of the information is covered in the handbook, the application handbook that you can find online. And this is a way for you to ask questions during the question and answer session. I'm going to go through slides and give you an opportunity in the chat. If you see something you want to ask a question about, put your question in the chat. And at the end, in our Q&A session, we will answer your questions. You can use the, when we get to the Q&As, you can use the hand raise button, and we will answer your questions. And so let's begin. All right. I'm going to turn off my camera so that I can go through the slides. And then once we get started, I'll turn my camera back on, okay? All right. Welcome. And our agenda today is I'm going to give an overview of the Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad program. We're going to have a special guest, former DDRA fellow, talk about his experience in the program to give you some insight on what it's like to be a DDRA fellow. I'm going to go through the G5 application information, give you some application tips and some important dates. Then we'll get into the Q&A and some information on how you can contact us. And Amy will be monitoring the chat, and let's get started. The DDRA program funds fellowships to colleges and universities to individual doctoral students who conduct research overseas in modern foreign languages and area studies for periods of 6 to 12 months. Okay? For the purposes of the program, area studies is pretty broadly defined and includes the study of geography, history, culture, economy, politics, education, international relations, and language. We have students in a variety of different disciplines every year. Now, DDRA is an annual competition, and it's really an institutional grant that awards fellowships to research scholars. So it's a bit of a hybrid program here in the department. So the eligible applicant are U.S. institutions of higher education, and who is eligible for a fellowship are U.S. citizens or permanent residents in the doctoral program in good standing at a U.S. institution of higher education. So if you are not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, you're not eligible for the program. If you are, you don't have to have passed your candidacy at the time of application, but you must have passed your candidacy status by the time you're ready to travel. And no international universities are eligible for the DDRA program. The institutional project period is 18 months. That means the university has 18 months to fulfill all the requirements of the program. But the research period for fellows is a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 12 months. That must be consecutive months. Okay? All right. And this program is not for new travelers who've never done research, this program is for students who are well on their way to becoming the next batch of area specialists. Okay, if this is your first time traveling abroad, there are several programs with the Department of State Fulbright programs that may be more appropriate for new scholars. And all applications must be submitted electronically via the Department of Education's G5 e-application system. So let's give some facts about the program. If you're not aware, this is the 60th year of the DDRA program. And so we're very excited that our program is one of the oldest programs continuing in the department. We funded over 6,500 DDRA fellows since 1964. Last year, 53% of fellowship applicants were funded, and the top research areas were the Western Hemisphere, East Asia, and the Near East. Okay. And now you don't want to hear from stuffy old me. You probably want to hear from one of our fellows, Chris Hulsoff from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He was a fiscal year 2022 DDRA fellow to Indonesia, and he's going to discuss his time in the DDRA program. Chris, welcome, and thank you for talking to our potential applicants to the DDRA program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And can you give us a brief discussion of your topic?
Yeah, so I went to Indonesia and I just returned back July 2024, so for 12 months. And my topic is looking briefly at covert operations and propaganda and how Western influence tied with the local, regional power dynamics resulted in a shift in the 1960s of the federal government as well as Indonesia's role on the international stage.
Oh, wow. That sounds really interesting. And how did you prepare to leave abroad for the extended period?
So preparation for leaving for a year, I really think of it in two ways. There's the obvious physical preparation and mental preparation. And by physical, I just mean like all the black and white stuff. You need to move out of your apartment, get storage. If you have a car, where you're going to put it, mail forwarding, that kind of stuff, right? And then there's some things in there that maybe you might not think about right away. Like if you want to keep your phone number, there's like Google Voice, so you can still get text from America. You need to figure out how are you going to get funds from your American bank account to a foreign bank account. You might want to bring some antibiotics with you because you're not there for a week, you're there for a year. So you're going to have to acclimate your gut biome and you might get sick a few times. Things like that you can just physically prepare. And then, of course, on the other end, you have to physically prepare your visa, research, whatever regulations the countries have, permissions, apartments, bank accounts, stuff like that. But there's also a mental preparation. If you have gone abroad a lot and conducted research and you've been out there for 2-3 months at a time, you're probably set. But a lot of people have really traveled more in the short term, tourist type thing. You've been out for a week or two, and that's not the same. And it's certainly, say, if you've gone to like Paris for a week, that's not the same as spending a year in Cambodia or something. So you do need to be realistic with yourself. Are you a lone wolf? Are you a social butterfly? Are you going to deal with bouts of depression from being isolated because you're in a new place without knowing people in a different language? So there's a lot of mental preparation there, as well as just getting to know the culture before you go as much as you can, and considering the fact, we often Americans want American culture to be universal, and we wear our cultural experiences on our sleeves in grad school, whether whatever identity politics or religious self-identification. And in many places around the world, that American culture does not translate. And so having a separation of work in a different culture versus your own personal morals, cultural norms and stuff. Being able to prepare for that mentally, I think, is a very big step. Whether you go social media in the country, their news, expat blogs, maybe that you can get culture shock from other people that have done it, TV shows, getting into that mindset before the plane arrives, I think it's going to be super, super helpful. It certainly was for me.
That's a wonderful perspective to give, because I think a lot of people think about, okay, what it's great and I'm going to get it, but they don't think about the mental adjustment that you need to make when you're living abroad, not just visiting abroad, but you'll be living in these countries for this time. So thank you for that. What was your most memorable experience abroad?
Oh, well, I've been to Indonesia a number of times, and I've had so many positive experiences, both on the end of just individuals and social experiences and professional experiences. Crazy experiences. I was there during the riots after the last presidential election, which obviously not a positive experience for Indonesia, but it was for me, witnessing the historical moment. But this trip, I had a very new experience that really tested my capacity for adaptation, right? Because dissertations, research, you have to be adaptable. That's the name of the game. There's no more receiving a task, turning in a paper, receiving a task. That's over. And real test of my adaptability in Indonesia came October 2023, when Israel began invasions of Gaza. Over 1 million people in Jakarta, Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation in the world, came out to protest that. And my always positive experience with people in Indonesia quickly turned the other direction, where just my skin color equated to American, equated to Israel, equated to anti-Islam. And I began to receive a lot of negative attention. People yelling things, throwing things, to people try to hit me with their vehicles. So it required a sudden adaptation from what we're not used to, right? And I had to change how I went about things. I had to think, how can I kind of shift the narrative about myself? I bought a bunch of pro-Palestinian shirts and stuff. That worked a lot. Opening dialogues with people when they hated me, instead of just saying, oh no, but actually talking to them. That was extremely memorable, challenging, but in a way helped me grow a lot. But also, if I can be more positive as well, very memorable experience had just been the Fulbright team in Indonesia. I did not expect at all the in-country team would be so helpful, like so mind-bogglingly supportive at every turn. So don't let me scare you from going abroad. You may run into something that you really need to adapt for and you need to be smart about. But there's always going to be those positive experiences as well.
That is so amazing what you just said, because I think many times we might just hear of, everything was peaches and cream and a rosy experience. But, the world is more volatile now. And so you're going to come across some things that as Americans, we haven't had that experience before. And so you need to be aware of your personal safety and security at all times, but as well as the commissions that we work with and the embassies are really your team on the ground who will help you with questions. They're there for you. They'll make sure that you're safe, that where you're going is a safe area. And they're really there for you to ask a lot of questions. So that is very important that fellows who are applying understand that, things are a little tense in the world. So just be prepared. But the best slogan you can go with is adapt and adjust. Yeah. Being flexible is super important in this program.
Yeah, and it's even more than just your social life, your safety, things like that. We are going under a Fulbright DDRA for work. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun. But we are going to research for a dissertation. So when things like this happen, even if not as a crazy of a situation as I experienced, you will find sudden unexpected roadblocks in the way of your research where you can't just keep trying to go through it. You have to figure out a way how to work around it. That constant adaptation, speaking with other people. There's networks of other Fulbrighters that have been there. There's so much to offer that's on your side. As long as you utilize those resources and keep an open mind, you can get through any of this.
Yeah, that's why you're super strong in these programs. And finally, can you give the applicants some tips that will help them with their application?
Yeah, I definitely can. I've been very fortunate. I was able to receive the Fulbright DDRA as well as the Fulbright US Student Program, a couple other grants. The Fulbright Indonesia program brought me on as a reviewer from the other side with Indonesians going to America. So I've been able to see things from different perspectives, been able to help students. And I think there's a couple of things that I would say are very common, very large aspects of your proposal, particularly that main writing essay, that could really help you out. And I think by far the number one thing that I could advise is trying to streamline your proposal in a way, and not necessarily to shorten it or anything. If I recall, I think you get 10 pages, something along that lines. You're going to use them. You're going to need them. But streamline it in a way, those basic fundamental writing tips we teach our undergrads, right? Where you have a concise introductory paragraph that outlines the whole thing. Like when you read that paragraph, you know what the 10 pages is about. And then as you go through the body of the paper, very strong topic sentences on every paragraph. So that way, if you happen to be a reviewer and you don't have time to read everything, you can read that first paragraph, the first sentence of every paragraph, and you know what the proposal is. And then if you end up reading beyond those topic sentences, it's really just more details on what the topic sentences are. And don't be afraid to use subheaders, right? If you have a section on research methodology, you have a section on where the field is, you have a section on your plans for research. If you have room, take that line, use a subheader, because those little things are going to make it so much easier for a reviewer where we don't know as an applicant if they are reading the whole thing. We don't know if they're skimming. We have no idea. So you want to make it as easy as humanly possible for them to find what they're looking for. So make sure to streamline that application, topic sentences, really strong introduction, paragraph, subheaders. And beyond that, if there's a second place that I could give really useful advice, is don't make assumptions of knowledge. I think we see this a lot with scholars, particularly people that are like really into their topic and they're just focused and they know everything about that topic. Whether teaching or writing, they sometimes can assume that people know something that they don't. So keep in mind, those reading your application might have no idea what you're talking about, or maybe they're vaguely familiar with it or something along that lines. So you want to write in a way that you're throwing out your jargon, you're throwing out any verbiage that you think makes you seem intelligent. You're being direct and you're being clear as crystal with what this topic is and what you're doing. Now, there's going to be a space, particularly like your literature review, like where you are in the field, how you're moving it forward. You're going to get into the weeds there. You're going to really go hard in the paint to show that you know the field and that you deserve to be there. But that's not the whole entire essay. So I would suggest keeping that in mind, and if possible, giving the essay to somebody to read that has no idea what you're talking about. So like for mine, give it to somebody that thought Indonesia is a Caribbean island or something, like that's clueless about Indonesia. And if they get it, if they're like, yeah, I totally know what you're doing, you're good. But if they start to be confused, keep in mind, it's what you're writing, it's not them. Beyond that, just keep in mind, just a mental solitude on this. Everything's a roll of the dice. Everything's by chance. You have no idea what the reviewers are going to think. Sometimes it's subjective, sometimes it's arbitrary, sometimes it's random. 53% of the people get funded. So just do your best. You're rolling the dice. Just try to make it a 6-sided die instead of a 20-sided die. But come in, do your best, throw it out there. Don't be afraid to apply broadly. Don't be afraid if you don't get any funding this year to try again next year. Don't take it too hard if you don't get funding. There is a random aspect to it.
Well, those were some excellent tips from Chris. And thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're super busy, and we appreciate you connecting back with our applicants. You were in their shoes a couple of years ago. And so it's nice to hear from you what the experience has been. Do you have any final words?
Just best of luck. Enjoy your time. Enjoy the process. And hopefully someday you'll end up putting in writing when you come back home. It's not the funnest time. So make sure to take some pictures, like smell the roses, enjoy yourself. Take a weekend here and there to, walk around and eat food and stuff like that. It's a great experience, once in a lifetime experience.
Thanks, Chris. And we appreciate you and look forward to calling you Doctor soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. On with the presentation. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. So let's get into the application overview. I'm going to talk about your budgets, what you should include in there, what countries are eligible, not eligible, and then I'll get into the selection criteria and what our reviewers are going to be looking for. All right, so what does DDRA fellowship cover? It covers your round trip international economy travel to and from the research location, the cost of living expenses, we call that a maintenance allowance, health and accident insurance, dependent support, research expenses, travel within the host countries, affiliation fees. And when we talk about dependents, we're talking about your married spouse and your unmarried children under 21, or someone that you provide the complete, you're completely funding that person in your family. So when we talk about the permanent residents, green card holders, you want to be careful because in some cases, in some countries, you may not be able to conduct research in the country in which you hold a passport. I'll talk later about the unallowable countries, the closed countries that fellows are not allowed to attend. And when we talk about the maintenance allowance, those figures are provided for you for your budget. So you must use the maintenance allowances that are in the handbook to fill out your budget. And please do not add any other amounts. Use the maintenance allowance for your cost of living expenses. Okay? Dependents do not include common law spouses or domestic partnerships or fiancés. A spouse is a part of a legally married couple without regard to the gender makeup, legally recognized by a state. And all children must have a birth certificate in order to be counted as a dependent. Okay? So no fiancés, no girlfriends or boyfriends or partners. Get married. Have a marriage certificate by the time of application. Okay. All right. What are some of the unallowable costs? is for the program. Okay, so we don't cover gifts, stipends, salaries, monetary honoraria for research subjects, research assistants, transcriptionists. Those things you can't pay for anyone other than yourself and your dependent allowance on the grant. Okay. That's just not allowed. No rental spaces, no conference costs, hotels, per diems are not allowed. Your dependents must accompany you throughout the fellowship. You can't park your dependents in one place and then you go to another country. No, they have to travel with you the entire period. And we don't cover travel costs for dependents. There's a dependents allowance for the cost of living, but the grant does not fund their travel expenses. We also don't cover any motorized vehicles, any cars or mopeds or motorcycles, really any equipment cost that lasts beyond the life of the grant is not covered with DDRA funds. There's no first class travel and any type of pre-award costs, which means your passports, visas, any kind of identifying documents. DDRA does not cover those costs. And if you must travel in order to obtain a visa, those are your costs to bear. Those are not covered by DDRA grant funds. Okay. Tuition or any fees for study are not covered, and any expenses resulting from any changes that you make to your grant are not covered by the DDRA program. Okay. I included the closed country list, and these are countries that you may not conduct research in. Okay, in Africa, these are the countries. East Asia, no one can go to North Korea in any Fulbright program, as well as China and Hong Kong by executive order. That has not been lifted, so please don't include those countries in your research. In Burma, as well as in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus are not allowable. Now, the Near East, the Gaza, West Bank area is closed. We will not send any researchers to that area. Okay, I get several questions about that. Please do not include that. You will not be allowed to go there. Okay. Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, those are all closed. In the Western Hemisphere, Cuba is still not open. Nicaragua, Venezuela, Haiti, and please do not put any U.S. states or territories. Those are not allowable. And any country that is listed as level 4 on the State Department's travel guidelines website. And in the application handbook, it includes all the countries in it that are closed and all that are open. If it doesn't have a closed or is not on this list, then it may be available. All right, so let's get into the technical review and the selection criteria. We have peer reviewers who are world area specialists in foreign languages and area studies from higher education institutions. They come from government agencies, non-government organizations throughout the U.S. and sometimes the world. And they are the ones who determine the technical scores in relation to our selection criteria and the competitive preference priorities. So your proposal will be worth 100 points for the 2 main sections, and then there are 6 bonus points if you are using one of the included languages, the fields, or you're at one of the institutions that we are requesting more participation. And I'll talk about those shortly. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the proposal, which is your selection criteria. And these are the things that you will be scored on in your application. The first section is the quality of proposed project. It's worth a maximum of 63 points. And here's what the reviewers will expect. In the hypothesis statement research question, now this is the meat of your proposal. It's worth 20 points because we want to know that you have a solid, well-organized proposal that is going to be excellently conceived and the research questions are clear. You want to discuss the sampling method and selection criteria for choosing the people or the archives that you're using and the documentation to be interviewed and studied. What type of research method are you using? How are you justifying your research methods? That needs to be clear and strong. You want to add a timeline for your research. And make sure that you are clear about what it is you're doing that anyone can understand it. Okay. The next criterion is your theoretical issues, the originality, the topic, and the literature. Here we want to know that you demonstrate a knowledge of the relevant literature in the field. You've analyzed and articulated the potential impact of the research and that you have demonstrated originality of the topic. Okay. The next section is the preliminary research. What have you done before to get you prepared for this research? Okay. And so we're looking that you've completed substantial preliminary research and you have demonstrated a clear plan for how you will conduct the research while overseas. Okay. The justification for overseas research. Here we want to know that you have demonstrated appropriate connections in the host country, and that you've provided a clear justification of why you need to be in that country or countries to do your research, meaning that you could not do it here. You have to be abroad to do the type of research that you're doing. Okay. Your dissemination plan is here. We're looking to see how you're going to share your preliminary and final findings of your research with your stakeholders, the academic community, and your host country. Be clear about how you will share a copy of your dissertation with the host, the NGO, community organizations collaborating with your research. Okay. The first 4 are worth 50 points. So it's a big chunk of the application. Your dissemination plans were 3 points. And this is one that I see fellow applicants missed points on because they have not indicated how there is a clear plan for how the advisor and your committee will guide and supervise the work of the applicant. So you need to discuss that and how you will continue communicating with your advisor while you're abroad. Will you do it through Zoom? Will you meet? How often you will meet? Will you email about your research? And part of that is we want to know that you're just not kind of abandoned out in the field, but that the advisor and the committee are engaged and invested in your project. Now, the next section is about you. The first section is about your project, but this section is about you and what you've done. So the first question is on your academic record. We're looking for strong evidence of a strong academic record, strong GPA. If you have been a previous recipient of fellowships, grants, or scholarships, particularly in your doctoral program, or you've presented papers, attended conferences in areas related to your discipline and current research. Okay? Are you a teaching assistant in the discipline related to this research is what they're going to be looking for. Okay? And here you want to provide your graduate, certainly your graduate transcripts, but you could include your undergraduate transcripts as well, because that's going to lead into the next question, your strength in area studies. Okay, does your records indicate a strength in area studies? And remember that big definition of area studies. It's not just the country that you're studying, but also have you taken courses about the history of the country, the language, there's a variety of different things that make up area studies, and that should be included in your transcript. And a tip, it could be very helpful to add this in your CV under courses relevant to proposed projects to make it easier for the reviewers to see what courses on your transcript relate to your current research project. Okay. The applicant's language proficiency. This is worth 10 points, and here there is a language evaluation that you will have to have completed, and we're looking that you have a extremely high level of competency in a non-English language of the country or countries of your research. Okay. It should be related to where you're going or the archival language used. And even if the official language of the country is English, you must use a non-English world language in your research. Okay, you don't have to include English as a language evaluation. You're not going to get any credit for that. But if you are only using English, then you will not receive any points in this section. And it's worth 10 points, so that could significantly make your application less competitive. Okay. Overcoming language barriers. Okay, so in this question, this is a relatively new selection criteria. And here we want to see that the applicant has what you have done to increase your language proficiency relative to the project. Even if you are an experienced person in the language, there are still things that you can do to keep your skills up. And here you need to talk about those, how you've overcome language barriers. And you can highlight in this section your courses taking, if you're tutoring, say you're expert in the language and you're tutoring others, if you're teaching in the language, if you're using, for example, language applications such as Babbel or some of the other language applications out there, use that to answer and respond to this question. It's worth 5 points. And finally, the applicant's ability to conduct research overseas is worth 2 points. And here we want to see that you demonstrate that you have the ability to perform this research abroad as proposed. Do you have previous overseas experiences? Did the applicant receive exemplary recommendations from the references? Let me just say this about the references. It would benefit you to select references who are going to give you a positive review. I've seen where someone has picked someone and that person ended up trashing them as a reference. So make sure that you're clear that the person you asked to be a reference can provide you with a good recommendation. Okay. So those two sections comprise the bulk of the selection criteria, and it's worth 100 points. Okay. And let's talk about our priorities. We have an absolute priority in the application, in our selection criteria, which means every application must address one of the 7 world areas, which are Africa, East Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, South Asia, the Near East, Central and Eastern Europe and Eurasia, and the Western Hemisphere. Again, please do not submit for U.S. territories or states. Remember that those countries that are closed, you will not be able to go to those locations. Okay, and then there's a possibility for 6 additional points if you meet one of these priorities. And the first priority is around language. A research project that focuses on any modern foreign language except French, German, or Spanish. Okay? And let me highlight there that it must be a modern foreign language. If you're using a language that is no longer being used, that will not be included, like Latin. That's not included. But, and this is irrespective of what is in the prior section. So you can receive points on this section for any of these, any language except for French, German, and Spanish. Okay. The second priority is on the fields of study. The secretary is looking for certain fields to highlight that they want to see more applications on. And we have those are the STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and math. Additionally, this year, what's new is psychology and social work, education, both comparative and international, international development, political science, public health, and economics. Okay, those are worth 2 points. And our final criterion is on the type of institution. It is around our HBCU institutions, our minority serving institution, and tribal colleges and universities. These are the only entities eligible for points in this criteria. So you don't have to do anything for this criterion. The department will determine who receives these points based on our information about the programs. So let me go through the initiating a G5 application for both the project director and the fellow, because I know we get a lot of questions on this, so I'm not going to go through it explicitly. If you have a lot of questions, you could contact the G5 help desk and they will help you. We have a primer document that we can send you that walk you through, but I just want to give you some tips about the application in our G5, G6. You'll hear us say G5, G6 interchangeably because the system is kind of transitioning from G5 to G6. Okay. So for project directors, new project directors particularly, pay attention. And here, to start a new package, when you're already registered and you want to initiate a new application, look for the Initiate New Application button on the screen below. Okay? It'll look like that. It'll say Initiate New Application. And here you can modify, delete, submit, unsubmit, or initiate applications on this screen. Okay? When selecting Initiate New Package, it'll populate all the institution's available applications. And our package is the 84.022 package that is the Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad program. And the user will be prompted with the question for that. Okay. The project director must select yes when asked, am I registering as a fellowship, Fulbright-Hays Doctoral Dissertation, or faculty abroad director? Okay, there you say yes. Okay. And then that will then put the DDRA application in your package list. Okay. And then once all your applications have been added, you can view then your application. So it'll have on the home page, it'll have click here to view my application. Okay. Then the project director will be presented with this screen when opening your package. Okay, this year we're doing you guys a favor. We got rid of one of the old forms. So now there's a form you don't need to complete anymore, but it'll look like this. And when you start off, they'll all say blank. Okay. And then once you complete them, it'll say complete. And you want to make sure every one of these are completed before you hit submit. Okay. Now, for the project director, after the fellowship applicant submits the application, G5 will send an email to the fellow applicant alerting them that the application was received and will be reviewed by the project director for submission, and provides the project director's email. The project director is responsible for reviewing and submitting the fellowship applicant's application as part of the submission. And in initiating the package as project director, you'll see it looks like this. And then anytime there's a yellow button, that's how you advance in G5. Okay. And in this, you would select yes to register. Are you registering as a fellowship doctoral dissertation? Remember that earlier? You say yes. And then you will choose here the selected college or university as appropriate. And this is important because whatever college you select here should be the college of your institution. And you want to make sure that all your fellows are using that same institution name, okay? Because if it doesn't, your fellowship applicant will not be connected to the university and you won't be able to attach that application to your institution, okay? Okay, and once the package has been successfully added for the project director, you'll see a screen like this. It'll say the action was successful. The package has been added to your list. All right, so then you can complete the forms. And remember, These are required forms, and all what you're looking for is to complete them, and then at the end it will say complete. And that means it has been attached to your application. And once those are completed, you'll see this page. This is a super important page. This is the OPE Fulbright-Hays item 22. This is how we get information, and G5 will display information about your applicants on this page. Okay, so you see the name. It will have what field they're in. It will have the countries of research. So say they're going to Namibia and Germany, that will show. And if they are using human subjects activities, it will be indicated here, and the amount of the application. And then you can, and then it will list all of them and give you a total here for the university. Okay. Make sure there is a little button here that says forms complete. If that's not checked, then your application is not complete. Okay. So always at the bottom of each form, mark form complete and then save as appropriate. And you can always maneuver in and out and save in your package. Once you have everything completed and your fellows are attached to your institution, you'll see a page like this. And this is where you can do one more check to make sure all your forms are complete. Your fellow will be, the name will be here, so you can see that. You enter this information. Now, your authorized representative is the person at your university who authorized you to submit the information to the Department of Education. You should not be the authorized representative as a project director. Someone else should be the authorized representative. And most importantly, you hit the submit button to submit your application. And once you have submitted, you will see this page. It will say the application was successfully submitted, and you will receive a PR award number. And that is the number that your institution is assigned for the rest of time. That will always be your number associated with that project. And only if you see this message have you successfully submitted your application. Okay. All right. So as a fellowship applicant, you also log in and complete information. But instead, when you get to this point, after you've registered and you're in the system, it'll ask you, are you a project director or state director? You say no here, okay? Because you're logging in as a fellowship applicant. And then there is a page that says package submission. You would click on that. And to start a new package, which is now your application, you would initiate a new application. You find your program, which is the Doctoral Dissertation Research Abroad program, 84.022. And then you answer as a fellowship applicant no to this question. Okay. If you hit yes, it's going to give you an error message and it'll be all messed up. So you hit no as a fellowship applicant. And then the application will be added to your list of applications. Okay? Now, once an application package has been selected for modification, you'll be presented with a list of forms. And these are your forms, so they are different. But here we have our referee forms for your graduate student reference forms and your language form. For every language you're using, you will need a separate language form. Okay? And then there are 3 graduate student reference forms. One of those must be from your advisor. Okay? If you don't have one from your advisor, your application will be ineligible. Okay, and I get this question a lot, but how do you get to the page where it will send the references to the language evaluator or the graduate student reference form? Well, first, in the 022 form, there are 9 questions, which are your demographic questions that you must complete in order for the reference forms to be available. So you have to have questions completed about your demographic information, your name, your country of where you're traveling, your language. And once you answer those first 9 questions, then this form will appear, and then you can send this form to your references. Okay, you need the last name, the first name, and their email address. And sometimes we get where the person says, oh, I can't find it, but tell them also to check their spam accounts or their junk mail accounts, because sometimes if your system is on a high security, the form might go to one of those places, and they won't be available. So make sure that it is a good email that you're using. I would recommend that you start that process now with your referees. Don't give them the last date of the application to turn something in, because all of your references must be attached to your application prior to the university submitting the application. Okay? Or if you have submitted your application to the institution, then the referee will be locked out of submitting their reference for the for your application. So I would give your referees a deadline date when they need to submit their reference, which is prior to you submitting your application to your institution. And work with your project director at your institution, and they will give you an overall deadline date for the institution. And I highly recommend project directors that you set an institutional deadline so that you have enough time to review the applications from all of your applicants. Okay. Like I said, the referee cannot submit a referral if the fellow or the project director has submitted their application packages. We get all this all the time where reference calls us, please, can you attach this? No, we cannot. So make sure that you're clear about when your referee should submit. Additionally, if a reference is abroad, they may or may not be able to submit and reference for you in G5. G6 is a U.S. government server, and sometimes it doesn't accept foreign servers adding information. So just be clear, it's best if your references are here in the US. It makes it easier. But you will have to, I would figure that out prior to the deadline, whether or not your overseas reference can submit in the G5 system. Okay, and so after they filled it out, the status of that form will change to complete, and you want all of your forms to say complete. And that, in addition to your project narrative and all the other pieces of information that are attached to the application, are completed. And if you can see this example, there are a couple of blanks in here. And so G5 will warn you, hey, do you really want to submit this application? All of your forms aren't complete. And so you would then want to go and make sure that these are submitted so that you can have a complete application. We will not attach additional references outside of the G5 system. Okay, so let's give you some application tips.
Did we lose Pamela? All right, just a moment, folks. We will hopefully have Pamela back in just a moment.
Okay, sorry about that.
You're back.
I'm back. Sorry about that. Let me try to get the session going. Let me find well, let me do it this way. Let's see, I might just have to do it the old-fashioned way. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's up.
All right, let me go to this. Sorry about this. I almost had it without any technical difficulty, but you know, gotta make sure you're on your toes there. All right. All right, let me give you some application tips. Remember to fill out and you want to save at least a draft of the DDRA form with your name, institution, country of research, and language. After that, the reference forms will appear, okay? The project director, if you have an instance where a fellow wants to unsubmit their application, you might have to unsubmit the institution's application. So make sure that everything that the student have is included before you submit. Okay? Again, make sure that the project director and the fellowship applicant are associated with the same institution in G5. We have attempted to remove all duplicates institutions to make that easier. One important thing on your application, fellows, applicants, is remove all personally identifiable information, like from your transcripts. And this includes your birth date, your social security number, your home address. Sometimes your old student IDs were your social security number. Just use the redaction feature in Adobe, or take a marker and mark it out so that is not transmitted. Any of that information is transmitted. Okay. It's a simple thing, but all applicants and referees hit submit to complete the application submission. Sometimes we get frantic calls. Oh no, I can't see my ink because you haven't hit submit. So make sure that the yellow button says submit. Okay. All right, our timeline. So the application will close January 15th of 2025. The peer review will recur sometime in spring, and the very last day to award grants is September 30th. With us going out earlier, we may or may not be able to make awards much earlier and be able to send fellows out to the field. We'll have to see. This is kind of a straddle year because of the new administration. We're not sure what our timeline would look like, but we wanted to go out as early as we could to give you all enough time to prevent any delays. Any questions that you might have? Here is our new web page. The department has undergone a new web page treatment, so we have new web pages, which is great. That's the new website. So if you have old things linked, change the links to the new website. And for G5, here is G5's phone number. If you're having any technical questions, anything about submission, anything about you can't see something in G5, call the G5 helpline. You can contact us for programmatic questions. Questions about the selection criteria, questions about the budget, things of that nature, you can contact us. But anything around how do I do this in G5 or G5 won't let me see this or submission, those are G5 questions, okay? And there's an online training module, and you can find that at g6.ed.gov. Now, in addition to our session today, we will have 2 live question and answer sessions on Microsoft Teams to answer specific questions. And the next one is November 20th at 3 to 4:30. And that is for the fellows, the fellowship applicants. And then on December 5th, we'll have a session for the project directors. Okay, and let's, if you have any questions, you can contact us. That's our information there. If you contact us at the DDRA at ed.gov, that's probably the quickest way. And if there's questions about your application, first ask your project director. They are the your main source of contact for your application. And then here are our socials. You can visit our website, our Go Global Ed, and our YouTube page where we have videos on DDRA fellows. They give tips. There's our Go Global Ed podcast. We have a Meet the Fellows session. So we have a lot there. And we'll have this session on the, we'll have this session recorded, and you can go to our YouTube page and listen. So thank you for your time. And we wish you all success in your application. And hope that you are able to make your dreams come true with Fulbright-Hays.